Welcome. Don't adjust your dial. Welcome everyone to the Lo-Fi Poli-Sci Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickering. That's right. Lo-Fi's and low fidelity, low quality, in your face, messy as can be global news show. And today's Tuesday's Top 10 list. Every Tuesday we look at global indicators and surveys to see what countries hold the top 10 rankings in particular categories. We look at things like GDP, HDI, Gini, smallest country, biggest countries, happiest countries, and more. And no worries, Lo-Fi listeners. We go into what each category means before we hit the list. Today's list. The 10 least corrupt countries in the world 2021. But how on earth could we know such a thing, you may be asking? And right you are to ask. Our data come from an organization called Transparency International, and a data set they create known as the Corruption Perception Index, which ranks 180 countries around the world via perceived corruption levels. And they use 13 different data sources in order to do this. Each either consists of analysts or experts or business people from that specific country themselves. And their sources of data are, in alphabetical order, as listed by Transparency International's methodology section. Number 1, the African Development Bank, Country Policy and Institutional Assessment. Number 2, Bertelsmann Stiftung Sustainable Governance Indicator. Number 3, Bertelsmann Stiftung Transformation Index. Number 4, Economist Intelligence Unit Country Risk Service. Number 5, Freedom House Nations in Transit. Number 6, Global Insight Country Risk Ratings. Number 7, IMD's World Competitiveness Yearbook Executive Opinion Survey. Number 8, Political and Economic Risk Consultancy Asian Intelligence. Number 9, the PRS Group International Country Risk Guide. Number 10, World Bank Country Policy and Institutional Assessment. Number 11, the World Economic Forum Executive Opinion Survey. Number 12, World Justice Project Rule of Law Index Expert Survey. Number 13, Varieties of Democracy, the VDEM V11 measure. Whew, that's a mouthful of data sources. I had to cut and edit that quite a bit, people, just so you know. But I suppose if you're going to call yourself Transparency International, you need to be transparent on where your data come from. Now, enough of the nerd talk. To the list. Let's go. Get it down. And coming in at number 10, Germany. Number 9, Luxembourg. Number 8, Netherlands. Number 7, Switzerland. And tied for number 4, Norway, Sweden, and Singapore. And tied for number 1, a three-way tie, Finland, New Zealand, and Denmark. Geez, that was the fastest top 10 list ever, am I right? It took longer to say where they got the data from than to list those 10 countries. So let's do it again for you. Coming back at you at number 10, Germany. Number 9, Luxembourg. Number 8, the Netherlands. Number 7, Switzerland. Tied for number 4, Norway, Sweden, and Singapore. And tied for number 1, a three-way tie, Finland, New Zealand, and Denmark. And there you have it, the 10 least corrupt countries in the world. But let's dig a little deeper, am I right? Only 2 of them are not European democracies. 9 of them are very free democracies, and one of them, Singapore, is still a bureaucratic democracy to be sure. And I'll be damned if the Scandinavian countries aren't well represented in this list, for sure. But let's be real, and remember how we said this surveyed 180 countries around the world? Well, isn't there about 200 countries in the world? Where are the other 20, question mark? An important question indeed. And this is a ramification of the fact that, in order for a country to be included in their list, Transparency International's rankings, out of the 13 sources of data it uses, the country has to be represented in at least 3 of them. That way, you have more variety in your data, and you're not relying only on one source for a country's ranking. Thus, there are about 20 countries that did not meet this criteria, so there you go. Though which ones? Well, that's for you to find out. And the question we always like to come back to, and really 2 questions wrapped into one. Does this list really even matter? I mean, this list doesn't measure corruption, does it? No. It's called the Corruption Perception Index, meaning, very importantly, it measures people's perception of a country's level of corruption. And that being said, you just may say, well, this list is bullshit then. If this list doesn't measure corruption, then why do we care? We don't care. We want to know the real level of corruption in a country, not what people think about it, right? And to that, I think Transparency International would respond like this. Okay, fair point. Then please, tell us how you plan to measure the level of corruption in a country. We'll wait. How do you measure corruption in a country? In every country in the world. Go. Well, in that 10 seconds of silence, you either figured out one of the world's greatest problems in existence, or you came to the quick realization that all of us have. You can't. You cannot measure corruption in a country. It's not possible. And for a very simple reason. Because of what corruption is. Corruption is people breaking the law in order to make money. And you cannot go into every country in the world or any country in the world and walk around government and businesses and say, hey, excuse me, please, could you give me a list of everyone here in the government that is corrupt? Yes, thank you. I'll just be waiting here in the lobby for you. I think not, and you know it. And that's why we use the Corruption Perception Index. It's why we use 13 different sources of data from around the world. And it's why a country has to be represented in at least 3 of those data sets. And really, this is about the best we can do right now. Is it without flaws? Of course not. And we're really going to look at those flaws a lot closer next week when we do the 10 most corrupt countries in the world. And that's this Tuesday's Top 10 list. Check out LoFiPoliSci.com. The music, the episodes, the blogs, the letters, the arts. Add us on all the socials. People hit us up. And it's not a cliche or a catchphrase. It's a lifestyle. Always remember that Lo-Fi Poli-Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Talk to you soon, Lo-Fi listeners. Pickering, signing off. A little behind the scenes for all you listeners that stuck around. I'm really not going to give you those 20 countries that are missing from the dataset. Though I think you should look them up for sure. But I know you won't. But still not giving it to you. You should. But I will give you this one because I know you are all wondering this out there, that you stuck around just to see if I'd give it to you. Well, here you go. The United States ranks number 27 out of 180 countries. And they are tied with one of my favorite countries of the year, Chile.